prophets are tales are crowded. Yeah, there's a dark cloud that's shrouded. They don't smile and they never will. Only cultures get the fill. Empty promises is what, yeah. No running water from year to year. Hearts that no one desires. That if there is a Messiah, someday we hear their whisper prayer. Covered always bare and scanty. 10 people in a one-bedroom shanty. Fell on the pavement. No vacancy, no employment. Cattle firecracker from gunshot. Lot of foreign things get pumped. Look out the window. Your voices from the ghetto. Crying, Lord, Lord, crying. Voices from the ghetto. Just hold them head up, boy. And them woman stronger than a wall. A big pusher iron she daughter. Son in jail for manslaughter. Too bad for him, be a name bad boys. No bail, that's the black man's choice. Like Shadow say, poverty is hell. She little girl child belly start to swell. Some say life is a cycle, but don't trust she don't circle. Yeah, we talk and go tell. Outside the siren keep open, inside the belly rolling. Police raid very often, Simpson measuring a coffin. One night in bed you're sleeping, that is a way that you're keeping. So you're praying to win the lotto, not to hear voices from the ghetto. Crying, 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 voices from the ghetto. Crying, Lord, crying, voices from the ghetto. We are not a forgotten people. With tented pride, the soldier on. Revolutions, gave politicians.
Good evening, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. My name is Jomo Thomas. The program you're about to listen to is called Voices. It's the Voices program for July 27, 2026. It's the last Monday of the month. And as we've tried to do from time to time, is to have the last program of the month as an open forum program where you have a chance to speak to all of the issues, all or any of the issues you want to speak to. As is normal, I will read my column for last week, and then we will get into a host of other things. Remember, open forum, 457-9997 is the number to call. 457-9997 is the number you can use to WhatsApp. But you have to help me out here. We have 2 hours to go. I hate to hear myself all the time. I prefer to interact with you. So help me out. Make comments, ask questions, call in, WhatsApp your comments, your opinions, whatever. So here goes. My column for last week is called Cuba is the Caribbean's Gaza. And by now, if you don't know about Gaza, you've been living under a rock. But the column for last week began with a quote from a 1962, remember the date, 1962 classified US State Department policy document. And it goes like this. The goal of broad-based US sanctions should be to deny money and supplies to Cuba, to decrease monetary and real wages, and bring about hunger and desperation and the overthrow of the government. I want to read that again. The goal of broad-based US sanctions should be to deny money and supplies to Cuba, to decrease monetary and real wages, and bring about hunger and desperation and the overthrow of the government. This document was from 1962. That's what? That's 64 years ago? 64 years ago. And that policy has been in existence ever since. So, beginning at 10 p.m. today, it should have been yesterday, coming from last week Friday. Beginning at 10 p.m. Saturday at Sion Hill, the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Cuba Friendship Society will hold a motorcade to show solidarity with the revolutionary people of Cuba. As many Vincentian patriots as possible should join the motorcade in acknowledgement of the tremendous assistance Cuba has rendered to our people and our country. The Trump regime is strangling Cuba. The embargo, which can only be described as evil, is killing men, women, and children. Fuel to generate energy and gas for people to cook with have been blocked from entering Cuba, causing a virtual collapse. Schools, hospitals, and industry have been forced to close. Cubans have gone back to cooking with firewood. Garbage has piled up on the streets as fuels for truck to cart it away remains scarce or non-existent. The potential for disease and death loom ominously, while with each passing day, critically important medical procedures have been postponed or abandoned. But this much needs to be clear. Trump and Marco Rubio have only turned the oppressive screws of the American state machine. Every American administration since the revolution's triumph in 1959 has conspired to overthrow and reverse the significant gains, especially those in education, in health, in sport, in medicine. As the lead quote from the secret US policy document from 1962 shows, Washington's singular plan is to bring about hunger and desperation and the overthrow of the government. Some say President Obama eased the blockade and reopened the US embassy in Havana after decades of closure. This is true, but Obama, recognizing that total blockade had failed to achieve its desired result, reestablished diplomatic relations even as his State Department continued with efforts to foment dissatisfaction and dissent intended to create destabilization and destruction of the revolution. The show of solidarity with Cuba is vitally important. This little revolutionary nation is a model of what the entire world should become. There is no denying that when measured by size of population and gross domestic product, no other country in the world has offered so much to humanity. It is a truism worth repeating. The world calls, and Cuba always answers. Whether it is offering assistance in blood to defend the independence of Angola, support for the anti-apartheid struggles led by Nelson Mandela in South Africa, against genocide of Palestinians, the fight against COVID-19 virus in Italy, and with the development and production of 3 COVID vaccines, or the training of tens of thousands of university students from across the world, Cuba has been exemplary. We in St. Vincent and the Grenadines have benefited tremendously from Cuban generosity. For these reasons and more, our collective conscience need to be moved. Beyond these basic facts, all Vincentians should be outraged by the inhumanity displayed by the Trump regime to our sisters and brothers in Cuba. Cuba is Gaza without bombs and bullets, at least not yet, because the Trump regime is threatening to military invade that land. But the United States regime, in callous disregard for human life and common decency, has caused and is causing death and destruction and untold human suffering among the 11 million Cuban citizens. Unconscionable is the portrait of President Trump and Secretary Rubio. These are evil men carrying the policies of an evil imperial system. History will not forgive us if we refuse to raise our voices in righteous indignation. We must all raise our voice against the collective punishment. Article 33 of the Geneva Convention of 1949 is the bedrock of international human rights law. It says no protected person may be punished for an offense they have not personally committed. Collective penalties and likewise all measures of intimidation or of terrorism are prohibited. Pillage is prohibited. Reprisals against protected persons and their property are prohibited. Cubans, despite the many deprivation of daily life, have refused to turn against their government. The American policy, which is illegal and criminal in intent and execution, is designed to kill as many Cubans as possible to save our Cuban brothers and sisters from themselves. But each independent country has the sovereign right to peaceful coexistence with other states and the right to non-interference in their internal affairs. America's opposition to Cuba has little to do with its armed revolutionary origins, led by Fidel, Raul, and Che, or the protection of democratic rights and freedom of people. Proof is all around us. Governments that came to power through the democratic ballot box and vote, such as Mossadegh in Iran, 1953, Allende in Chile, 1973, Manley in Jamaica, 1972 to 1980, Hugo Chavez, 2003, Manuel Zelaya in Honduras, 2009, or Mohamed Morsi in Egypt, 2012, have been overthrown or destabilized and replaced by savage American-backed military dictatorships. In contrast, countries such as Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, forever cuddled by the American regimes, do not have a democratic franchise. Israel, the darling of the American political class, is Exhibit A for brutality, torture, and genocide. Inaction in the presence of wrongdoing is not neutral. It is a form of participation, and speaking out is a moral imperative to prevent complicity. Raise your voice for Cuba. That was my piece for last week. And I want us just to spend a little time on it since it's the open forum, because it makes some very important points, I think. And you may agree with me if you so choose. The key for us to understand is that this American policy of destabilization and sanctions and embargo is not new. The American clear view from as early as 1962, or even before that, but at least we have a declassified position paper, policy document from 1962, 64 years ago, which says that the policy of the government is to bring deprivation and hardship that may lead to the people of Cuba turning against their revolutionary government. After 64 years, this has not happened. And the Americans, led by Trump and Rubio, are intent of pushing this country into such a state that they would turn around and say it is a failed state. When in fact, what Cuba is, if anyone pay close attention, is a resistant state. It defends its independence. It defends its territorial integrity. It defends its sovereignty. And it is a champion in defending the rights and freedoms and health and training of other people from across the world. So after all of these years, 64 years, the Americans have turned up the screw. They have sanctioned one organization after the other. And as you saw in the most recent United Nations vote on Cuba, the Americans have gotten now to punishing or to threatening countries who believe and who support even the discussion at the United Nations, where the Cubans try to bring to the international body the economic and political and social and healthcare effect of the embargo. So whereas in previous years, upwards of 170, 180 countries of 194 supported Cuba right and called for the end of the embargo, this year up to 30 countries abstained. Some of them stayed away from the vote because of the American pressure. But it's a tribute and honor to those 145, 150 countries who stayed in that hall and voted and said that if international law is to mean anything at all, what the Americans are doing in Cuba is totally and completely wrong. Now, I think that there's a number of things that we need to know that I don't think people remember or people appreciate. Under my column earlier today, a gentleman said, well, we have to give credit to Cuba for helping with the independence struggles in Angola, Namibia, and to help in bringing about the end of apartheid in South Africa, because Nelson Mandela credited the Cubans for helping to it. He said, but they made they committed an unpardonable sin by allowing the Soviets back in 1961, 1962 to put nuclear weapons on Cuba. Now, every country, as I said, has a sovereign right to do what it wants to do. And the same people, the same United States, who almost brought the world to an end in 1962 with the Cuban Missile Crisis, is the same United States that since 1991 has moved to bring its NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization countries, closer and closer to the border of Russia. So you don't want nuclear weapons close to you, but you want to bring your military alliance up to the doorstep of another country. So that's the kind of hypocrisy that we see. And people need to remember that. People need to remember as well that there's the Geneva Convention, which speaks to international human rights law, and Section 33 in particular. Section 33 in particular protects people from punishment for offenses that they never committed. It protects them against intimidation or terrorism pillage where you can just go and take their things. You saw what happened when the Americans took over Venezuela, when they invaded and kidnapped President Maduro back in January, where they now control Venezuelan oil. They collect the money for Venezuelan oil. In fact, I saw a piece where a former vice president under President Chavez wrote a very important piece in which he was lamenting the state of affair where America literally controls his country. And he was calling for people to fight, to resist against that. So I want to also make the point, I made it in my column and I want to reiterate the point that America has no interest at all, absolutely none. You hear people talk about, oh, Cuba is a revolutionary government. They never had free and democratic elections with opposition parties and so on. You hear them, the most recent target now is they made a big clamor and they are ramping up a campaign against President Traore, Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso, saying that he's a dictator and he's taking the money to protect himself with military alliances and so on. But I want those of you who listened, heard me go through this list, but I want to go through it again for good measure. In Iran, the same Iran that is so much in the news today, there was a president by the name of Mossadegh, and he was elected in 1952. Democratic elections in Iran, and the British and the American, the American CIA, the British MI5 conspired to overthrow him. And blood flowed. Same thing happened in Indonesia with Suharto. In 1970, Salvador Allende was elected as the Democratic president of Chile. Nixon, who was the president of the United States at the time, and Kissinger, who was the national security advisor and secretary of state, said, you know, we are going to make the economy, the Chilean economy scream. Our plan is to save the Chileans from their own irresponsibility. And in 1973, they murdered Allende and took over the country and installed the fascist dictator, Augusto Pinochet. In 1972, Michael Manley, Democratic Socialist, was elected in Jamaica, and his government lasted from 1972 to 1980. And a lot of the gun violence that you see in Jamaica today, it has its genesis in that period, because the CIA brought in hundreds of guns into Jamaica, started shooting up people, caused the middle class to run. Many of them never returned to Jamaica. But Manley was democratically elected. He was democratically elected in 1972, and he was democratically elected again in 1976. And then the pressures came on in 1980, he lost to Edward Seaga. Same thing in Venezuela. Hugo Chavez was elected in 1999. By 2003, the United States tried to inspire a coup to try to overthrow him. Manuel Zelaya in Honduras, 2009 and 2008, he was elected democratically. In 2009, he was overthrown. That coup was said to be Obama's first coup, because remember, Obama was elected president in 2008. Then in 2012, in Egypt, the leader by the name of Mohamed Morsi was elected by a landslide in Egypt. 2011, he was elected. In 2012, Obama's second coup, he was overthrown and he was replaced by the General Sisi, who murdered scores, hundreds of Egyptians on the street of Cairo. But he's their darling. They like him, right? So this notion that America believes in democracy or want to see free and fair elections is not true. But let's contrast. Let's do the contrast now to the countries that America cuddles. Saudi Arabia abolished slavery in 1968. Egypt, which is controlled by the military general General Sisi, overthrew President Morsi in 2013, and he has been in power ever since, from 2013 until now, for 13 years. Jordan, no elections. Lebanon, it is said that the Americans pay for the military in Lebanon. This is why Israel would bomb that country and the Lebanese army does nothing. Had it not been for Hezbollah, Israel would have taken over that country already. Bahrain, another country, brutal dictatorship. Kuwait, another country, no elections. Qatar, no elections. And all of them are coddled by the American political class. And as I said in my column, the best example of all, the example that portrays brutality, torture, genocide, wanton disregard for human life, butcher children, men, women, and children. In Gaza, they killed up to 70,000 people, and the Lancet magazine, which is one of the most prestigious health magazine in the world, say upwards of 200,000 Palestinians may have been killed, beginning with that genocide of 2023 Gaza. So I just want to bring those points to people so that they would have an appreciation. So when you hear others talking about, oh, you know, there's democracy and this one don't have elections and this one, it's a game, and you need to see through the game. Otherwise, you will get caught up in spreading their lies, their propaganda about what is happening in these countries. So the task. We have a caller?
We have a first call, yes.
Oh, caller, good evening. It's time for your voice.
Do you have open forum today?
Excuse me?
Do you have an open forum today?
Open forum, we have you.
No, I got to know because I don't, if you're not reject the topic, then I don't want to bring it up.
We have open forum. When an open forum is anything goes. So you are on.
Yeah, this morning you were saying your suitcase to Montserrat. So what you do is on your carry-on piece, you put at least a shoes and a pants in there and a shirt or whatever. So you have something to wear if you miss your main suitcase, your largest suitcase.
Yeah, but you say that to say what?
That's what you gotta do. Well,
You say
you were
what?
complaining about the losing suitcase, which I think it happens all the time that when people losing don't get their suitcase.
But I don't think I don't think you appreciated the point I was making this morning. The point I was making is that these airlines do people a disservice. And the way in which they do this service is, as I explained, I got onto the plane at Argyle, and the plane flew to St. Lucia. My bag was on. It stopped in St. Lucia, and when I got to Antigua, the bag was not there, and I didn't get it for days, and I had a court matter. I appreciate the point you're making, that, yeah, maybe you should carry a carry-on, and you know now the carry-ons are becoming smaller and smaller. You have to pay for them anyway. But the point I was making is this.
Yeah, but carry-on.
Hold on. I'm gonna let you speak. Hold on. The point I was making is this: that when I got to St. Lucia, you know why my bag got off the plane? See if you can hazard a guess.
Why? Because it probably weight. The weight.
No.
You have to balance.
You're smarter than that. Think again. Think again. Why my bag got off a plane, or why bags invariably get off planes?
Maybe they have to search the bag. Maybe they wanted to search it.
Think again. I know you're smarter than that.
No, I'm wasting time. Come on, you all talk about wasting
No,
time.
you're
Go
not
ahead.
wasting time. You're not wasting time. I want to draw you out because you have a particular position.
I'm wasting time if you want me to waste time. But if I want to say something, it might that's you think it's wasting time, you jump in. So I think you're wasting time. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Well, it wasn't wasting time. I just wanted you to think. The reason why my bag was on the plane from St. Vincent, St. Lucia, and it was off the plane when the plane took off from St. Lucia and landed in Antigua, is because the airline made the choice that it's going to bring a human being onto the plane and show off the bag. So they
important government minister something.
Hold on. They made the calculation that they would make money and inconvenience me and other people whose bags didn't come. That's the larger point.
A very important person, the prime minister something is coming.
Everybody's important on the plane. I paid my money to be on the plane.
But you know, sometimes they, for whatever reason, there's something even in Trinidad, JetBlue, they offer money to give up your
yes,
flight.
no, but my friend, when the planes tell you, when the planes tell you to give up the bag, is when the plane is packed. So the plane is packed with human bodies, and they say, look, take another flight because of the weight factor which you are alluding to. But if the plane takes off, as it did in St. Vincent and then landed in St. Lucia, it wasn't the weight. The weight became a problem in St. Lucia because they decided to take off my bag and other people's bags so that they can bring somebody onto the plane and make money, which is because the bag more than invariably is lighter than the person who's coming onto the plane. But they want to bring another 2 or 3 persons, so they take 10 bags off. And I'm not so sure how you're defending that, or why you're defending it.
Well, if it's the weight, you have safety comes first. So that's why I was.
I'm not understanding your point. Of course, safety comes first. The point I'm making is that they're taking your bags off to put a human being on the plane, which is weight. And invariably, a human being weighs more than the bag.
Well, if they had, let's say they had an empty seat there. Let's say that seat was empty going to Antigua. And now that somebody booked. So they put the person in that seat so they could make the money. They overbook. They overbook.
All right, my brother. Okay, I'm not sure.
Listen, they overbook flight sometimes, they say, because sometimes they know people just miss the flight. So then those people were able to come in. They say they do that all the time. But I have a number of people who work with airlines. They say that the airlines invariably overbook by 10% because more often than not, a lot of people don't come for their flight. Right.
But what happens? The problem is
whatever, and they miss the flight. Yeah.
The problem is what happens when the people show up. You shouldn't inconvenience me. You shouldn't inconvenience me.
People show up, so those people don't get it. They probably would be on standby. They put you on standby, and you might get the flight, or you might not get it. They tell you standby.
All right, sir. All right. I think we have exhausted that.
Standby, yeah. All right. Later. Bye.
Good. All the best. Well, I know. But yeah, so that's the point. He wanted to make that point about bags and where you're complaining for because you're not prime minister. You ever hear foolishness up? It's like me making a decision that somebody has a case that worth $500 and another person has a case that worth $200,000 that I'm going to make, and I'm making a choice. The point is, the person who has the $500 case. Couldn't care less that I have a $200,000 case. For that person, his $500 case is the most valuable thing to him. Similarly, to the passenger, his bags arriving with him or her bag arriving with them is the key thing. Doesn't matter who you are and what your status is, and it is improper for the airline to take off your bag to put on a human being so as to make money at your expense, because then you show up in another country, you have no clothing, or you have little or no clothing, you have to go out and buy clothing. That can't be right. So that's that point. Yeah, Doc. The program is called Voices. We hear all of the voices, including yours. Who's talking about patience? But I want to a significant thing happened today. Some of you may have seen it already. Is that in the first time in 1993, that's in 33 years. For the first time in 33 years, a Vincentian who's charged for murder was allowed on bail. In 1993, if my memory serves, a gentleman by the name of Lucky Balcom had been accused of murder. And when the matter came up for bail, somebody, the lawyer, the defense counsel, made an application for bail, and bail was denied. And then the NDP government went into parliament and passed and amended the statute to say, if you are accused of murder, you have to wait at least 9 months before you can apply for bail, or you have to wait until the preliminary inquiry began, whichever comes first. All right. Today, however, a young 16-year-old female, you all who pay close attention to Vincentian reality may remember that back in, I think it was in March, young girl, last name Thomas, I think her first name eludes me now, apparently got into an altercation with an elderly man, struck him over the head, and then he died. She was initially charged with attempted murder, died, they upgraded to murder, and then Ralph Gonzalez, opposition leader who represented her, went to the court, made an application for bail. Bail was denied, properly so, if we understand the law. For those of you who don't understand the law, I'll spend a little time explaining. The magistracy is a creature of statute. In other words, magistrates' courts came about as a result of a law passed in the parliament. So it's a creature of statute. And there's also was an amendment to the code which says that if somebody is accused of murder and is being tried for murder, that person can get bail. Well, previously, you used to say, you can't get bail for murder. But that has changed over time across the region. St. Lucia, Trinidad, Guyana, Barbados, countries have allowed for bail. And as you saw in Eyewitness News, Eyewitness News so brilliantly reminded us in the piece. It says, and I'll read it because I think it gives very good context to what we're talking about. It says, a legal team which opposition leader Ralph Gonzalez is a member has secured bail for a murder accused 3 years after he said that some judicial officers behave as if they are living on Mars by granting bail for murder. I think that what the piece is doing is reminding us of Gonzalez's hypocrisy, in that when he was prime minister just 3 years ago, he argued against getting bail, and now he's part of a team that is applying for bail. The Eyewitness News piece went on to say, in May 2023, when he was Prime Minister and Minister of National Security, amidst a spate of killings that saw homicide count rise to a record 55 that year, Gonzalez used the regional symposium on crime to criticize judicial officers across CARICOM for granting bail to murder accused. Sometimes, says Gonzalez, you get the impression that some magistrates, depending on who is the lawyer, their clients seem to get a better treatment. How could you go and give someone who's charged with murder bail? Let's get serious. Where do these judges live? On Mars? But today in court, the legal team, former Prime Minister Gonzalez, former Finance Minister, his son Camilo, long-standing legal attorney, experienced attorneys Ronnie Marks and Graham Ballas appeared for this young lady, and Camilo made the arguments before the court, and there was some concession. Dwayne Daniel argued for as Director of Public Prosecution. Sharifa Harper appeared for the Attorney General, and then the decision was made that this young lady would be allowed bail, 16 years old, she would be allowed bail, $25,000 bail, 2 sureties. She has to report to the station in Connery Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. She cannot travel out the country without explicit permission of the court. Her travel, well, she doesn't have a passport. So it's an interesting thing that happened, because up until now, and like I said, only twice. People need to understand, though, that it doesn't mean that anybody and everybody who commit a homicide and who is charged with murder is going to get bail. It's going to be on a case-by-case basis. Gonzalez knew this when he was commenting back in 2023, but he sought to politicize the issue. And now here he is leading a leading member of a team that has won bail for this young lady. So the parties agreed on bail. What is left to be argued is whether the law as it stands now, which says that someone who is accused of murder and is being tried for murder, whether that person can get bail as a matter of right, or if, as the statute says, they have to remain for at least 9 months incarcerated, or until when the preliminary inquiry is called. So that's a constitutional question. And one of the points that Camilo Gonzalez made today is that, I'm trying to find my constitution. One of the points that Camilo Gonzalez made today is that, oh, there it is. He pointed to section 16 of the Constitution, which talks about the right to liberty. He says that if a person alleges that any of the provisions of the sections 2 to 15 are the fundamental rights and freedoms of individuals in St. Vincent, and those include, let me just quickly run them through for persons who don't know them. It's protection from arbitrary search and entry, secure protection of the law, protection from inhumane treatment, protection from degradation of property, protection from slavery and forced labor, protection of the right to personal liberty, right? So any of those, he cited section 16, which says, if any person alleges that any of the provisions of those sections inclusive 2 to 15 of this Constitution has been, is being, or is likely to be contravened in relation to him, or in the case of a person who is detained, if any other person alleges such contravention in relation to the detained person, then without prejudice to any other action with respect to the same matter that is lawfully available, that person or that other person may apply to the High Court for redress. So that's what happened. An application was made to the High Court. There were two applications, actually, one for bail of the young lady and the other challenging the statutory provision which says you can only get bail after 9 months. As I said, Mr. Daniel argued for, in his role as Director of Public Prosecution. Camilo Gonzalez argued for the claimant, the 16-year-old Ms. Thomas, and there was some agreement that the young lady should be bailed. As I said, sometime in the future, I don't know. I walked out of the court before it ended, so I don't know if a date has yet been set for the substantive constitutional argument. But the law, there's a lot of fair amount of case law on the point. It says that there cannot be an absolute bar to bail. There cannot be an absolute bar because liberty is fundamental. And this is why across the Caribbean, Bahamas, Trinidad, Barbados, Guyana, St. Lucia, successful applications have been made, and people in those countries can now apply and get bail. And as we are seeing, if the constitutional argument holds up, when it is heard before Justice Tom, if Justice Tom rules that the statutory provision in Section 42, if she rules that that's provision which said that you must be detained for 9 months, or that you can apply for bail only either after 9 months or at the preliminary inquiry. If she finds that to be unconstitutional, then everyone will be able to get bail. It's an issue that I raised and talked about before. It's one that I think it's due and just, because sometimes people are spending a lot of time waiting for trial. I had a client who spent 7 years in jail. And then he was tried. And after a full trial that went on for months, the then Prime Minister, the then Director of Public Prosecution, Sajila McDowell, withdraw the charge after we made a no case submission. So you have a man spend 7 years, and then the charge is withdrawn, and he would have lost 7 of his best years. He was 28 years when he went in. When he came out, he's 35. But what did we filed a civil claim for violation of his rights, his right to liberty, and so on. But that trial comes up sometime next year, so we'll see where that goes. But I see that Doug Howard is saying, I'm not sure. I am very biased, and I'm not sure why he's saying that, what that might mean. But so that was an important development today, and anybody who is interested in the law would find it to be particularly important. And so I wanted to bring that to people's attention, because, as I said, you cannot have an absolute bar, and in St. Vincent, we don't have an absolute bar. You say you have to be incarcerated for 9 months. And some of the things which I am sure may come into play when the constitutional point is argued is that, one, we don't have an absolute bar, so we are not in violation of the Privy Council's provision But the question then becomes, why 9 months? I presume the argument would be made, yeah, we want to hold this person in for a while because if they commit a murder and they are on the outside, they may hamper the police investigation, they may harm somebody else, for the security of the deceased's family, and so on and so forth. Those arguments are some of the arguments that may be made. But I can remind the people that the Privy Council is very strong on these points. So there's a real possibility that this provision, which used to be called the Lucky Balcom provision, 9 months or at the preliminary inquiry, may fall away. And what we may have is the Young Thomas court decision, which may say that, yeah, once you, whatever crime you are charged with, you should be allowed up for bail, as it is in so many other countries. So important legal development. Let's see where that goes. Just want to bring that to people's attention so that they would know that the law is moving forward. It's moving forward in I think in a positive way. Someone by the name of Kiki De Silva says Ralph Gonzalez is a master of contradiction. It was the same when the young lady from his constituency was pardoned by the Mercy Committee for having a gun in her possession. Who did donkey love? Who the donkey loves, it kicks, and who does not. Oh, who the donkey loves, it licks, and who does not love, it kicks. Says Maurice Delicia says, good night, Jomo. There is no overlapping role here pertaining to the former prime minister or minister. Or defense lawyers just succeeded with this argument for bail. Oh no, I'm not saying that there is an overlap. What I'm trying to point out is the hypocrisy of a man who, and I made this point before, of a man who 3 years ago, as the head of government in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, went to an important crime as a health problem in the region and said, are these people living on Mars? Why would they want to give bail? Why would these magistrates, judges want to give bail to someone who committed a murder? And here he is, part of a team, arguing that this young lady who's accused of murder, we know I don't think there's any argument that she killed a man. So, but here they are. He's as part of a team that argued successfully, which resulted in the young lady going home. I think she might be home now. So that's the point that's being made. I don't think there's anyone is confusing or conflating the notion that he's prime minister or the minister. I said that he's the former prime minister or he's the minister. They just happen to be the persons. Camilo, who was the leader counsel in the case, happens to be the former minister of finance. Tomorrow, the lead counsel for the petitioners happen to be the former prime minister of Trinidad, Stuart Young. I'm not confusing or conflating them. Stuart Young is a lawyer, and Stuart Young is going to make important arguments, I'm sure, for, I think he represents both Carlos James and, not Carlos James, Luke Brown and Carlos Williams. So it so happens that he had a political position in much the same way in which Ralph Gonzalez and Camilo Gonzalez held prominent positions in the former government. So it's not an attempt to confuse and conflate. It is an attempt to show that these people in another life, in another dispensation, had one view, and later on, using the law as it is able to make another point. So the case law, Miss Marisa, was always there. The case law was always there. In fact, I know that in my own chambers, I know that Zita Barnard represents an 11-year-old girl. Many of you may remember this 11-year-old girl who was charged with killing a young man down at Sand Hill Bay. And there was some conversation in the office about bringing an application for bail for her. And it didn't happen. And one of the reasons why we didn't press with it is because her family circumstances were such that we knew that the court would, if the court were to allow bail, the bail would be more than likely outside of the reach of the family. So we thought it might have been a Pyrrhic victory. Yeah, you get bail, but the young lady may not have been able to leave the prisons. Someone is saying that Cheryl Record, my law school colleague, is saying, if Mr. Gonzalez is representing the accused, he has a duty to present the best argument to get her bail, regardless of his personal opinion. I am absolutely supportive of that view. I mean, once you take on the role of legal representative, you have to put the best foot forward. Many of us do all kinds of cases all the time. We may not necessarily support what the person does or what the person did, but the law requires that that person, that all of us, each of us, have a defense, and that all of us is entitled to a defense and entitled to a lawyer who can best present our case before a judicial tribunal. So yeah, we're not here talking about personal opinions or what his personal opinion is. The question is that as politician, he argued vigorously against it. This is a philosophical argument rather than just an opinion, Cheryl. At least I think you might agree with that. But and this doesn't stop you from arguing against your philosophical position. But if you have a philosophical position and you are articulating it and arguing it in a court of law, I mean, in the public domain politically, it would seem to me that you can go and argue and say, yes, I think this young lady should, she's 16 years old, the way in which the incident occurred, there's a lot that may come out that may prove that she may not be found guilty of murder. So, and then the question is the question of liberty. I make this argument all the time in court, that liberty is so fundamental. And Camilo made the point today, which I think is significant. He argued that, look, this young lady spent up to today was 72 days incarcerated, that the Director of Public Prosecution, I think, said that the preliminary inquiry may come up towards the middle of August. He said that may be another 17 days, but even if it were a day, that day was too much of a restraint on a fundamental right to liberty, and therefore there should be bail until the substantive constitutional question comes up as to whether the statutory provision was met constitutional muster. So I don't think that that I am here arguing that because he held a position that he should not put the best legal argument forward. I am making the argument that a country that is highly politicized as ours, it's worth noting that a man who just a few years ago argued that no magistrate, no judge in the region should offer bail to someone who's charged with murder, and asked forcefully at the time Are they living on Mars? What's wrong with them to now make the same legal argument which the lawyers made before? But when lawyers made that point before, one of the points that the former prime minister made is that, look, some of these clients, depending on who is their lawyer and depending on the relationship that the lawyer has with the magistrate or the judge, they get a better deal. So those are the kind of the nuances and the points that are being brought out here. But I don't think that anybody thinks that former prime minister should make anything less than a robust argument in defense of a young child, 16-year-old girl who committed this act and has to stand trial for the matter. All right, so that's that point. We're going to take a short break and then we come back with more. I am Jomo Thomas. This is Voices.
WeFM 99.9 presents Voices, a talk show that's not just new, it's phenomenal. Voices, it's interactive and thought-provokingly different. Voices, hosted by Jomo Thomas. We'll analyze all the issues of concern to you, the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the diaspora. Voices. We have a voice. We need your voice. Together, we are the people's voice. Voices.
These are some serious times. All I can see around us is violence and crime. Ooh, yeah. Ooh, yeah. They got so much things to say right now. They got so much things to say. They got so much things to say right now. They got so much things to say. Hey, but I'll never forget no way they crucified Jesus Christ. I'll never forget no way they sold Marcus Garvey for rice. I'll never forget no way they turned their back on Paul Bogle. Hey, so don't forget who you are and where you stand in the struggle. They got so very, they taking everything, they say so much today. They got so much things to say, so much things to say. 999 I come to fight flesh and blood, but spiritual wickedness in high and low places. So while fight you down, stand firm and give Jah thanks and praises. Cause I do expect to be justified by the laws of men. Oh, jury found me guilty, but true judge prove my innocence. The rain fall, and one man's house.
Come on, let's go back.
When the rain fall, it won't fall on one man's house. Stop it singing. So very much, so very much. They got so much things to say right now. Yeah, they got so much things to say. Hey, but I have come to fight flesh and blood. Spiritual wickedness in high and low places. So while they fight, you don't stand firm and give Jah thanks and praises.
All right, I'm Jomo Thomas. This is Voices. We are back for the second hour. Now, I want to comment a little or to read parts of a column that was done by my favorite Vincentian columnist, And I'm talking here about no other than Professor Justin Robinson, who writes in the Searchlight on the Eye of the Needle, which was the head under which Frederick Rose wrote. This week he has a piece called "The Internet is Not What You Think It Is." And I want to walk us through some of the thoughts of just Professor Robinson, because I don't believe that many of us know. And I'll give an example. I remember some time ago, it might have been last year or the year before, a good friend of mine, good female friend of mine, commented to me. She says, you notice that you put these things up and nobody seems to bother with you. Nobody seems to bother with your post. That many of them would go and there's not even a single like. And I remember putting a post on Facebook saying, Facebook is deep sinking my post, meaning that I would put something up, and if the algorithm don't like it, so for example, if I put up something about Israel, if I put up something about the United States, or if I put up any serious thing that would really help to lift our people's consciousness, they deep sink it. When I put up a picture of me and somebody else, probably get 50, 60, 70, 100, because it's rather empty, right? So I want to deal with this piece that Professor Robinson did last week, in which he says, titled "The Internet is Not What We Think," so that people can get an understanding. It goes like this, the introductory part. It says, a grandmother in Layu opens Facebook to check on her grandchildren. Within minutes, she's watching a video about a miracle diabetes cure promoted by a person she has never met. A young man in Georgetown searches Google for advice on starting a small business, and the first 5 results are paid advertisements. A mother in Kingstown, scrolling Amazon for school supplies, buys the item at the top of her search, not knowing that the seller paid to put it there and that a better, cheaper option sat buried on page 2. Each believes they are making free choices in an open marketplace. None of them are. We were told the internet would be the great equalizer. Instead, it is reproducing the very inequalities it was supposed to dismantle. The playing field is not level. The playing field is for sale. And then he says, the algorithm is not your friend. So each time you open Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube, an algorithm decides what you see. Do we know this? Do we know that that's what happened? It does not choose what is true or important. It chooses what will keep you scrolling because your attention is the product being sold. In 2024, Meta earned over US $160 billion in advertising revenue, while Google owned US $265 billion. These sums are generated by one mechanism, showing you content designed to hold your gaze long enough to sell it to an advertiser. You are browsing the internet. You are not browsing the internet, I'm sorry. The internet is browsing you. Now, those are serious thoughts. And I just want people to understand the points that Dr. Robinson making. Because all of us have a smartphone, and all of us go on there from time to time, and we find a lot of information there. It makes us laugh. Sometimes we find information that makes us cry. Sometimes we find useful tips on everything. I mean, you ask a search engine and something comes up that may help you in one way or the other. But none of this responds to our desire. All of this, as Dr. Robinson says. We are not browsing. The internet is browsing us. And I think it's just important that we know this. You know, those of you who follow Voices would know that I ended by saying, read, pay close attention, because what you don't know can kill you. And you need to know as well that your phone is smart, your TV is smart, and every electronic gadget that you may come into contact with is smart. You say something, or sometimes you write a letter to someone and you mention a name, and then you may go on Facebook and see it says, here's somebody you may know. All because of something you might have done the day before, or an hour before, or a minute before. So just that people get a feeling for what they are doing, get a feeling for how these things play out. Dr. Robinson says, Google operates the same way. The line between paid ads and genuine results blur to near invisibility. When a young entrepreneur in Kingston searches how to export CMOS, or a patient in Chateaubriand looks up a symptom, the most visible answer is not the most accurate. It is the one someone paid to place there. Now consider what this means for a Vincentian producer. A woman in Park Hill bottling world-class pepper sauce, a boat builder in Beckway, carving model schooners that collectors abroad prize, a farmer in Union Island with CMOS product the world has finally learned to pay for, a young developer in Kingston developing an app. None can compete in a US $56 billion advertising auction. Their product may be superior, their ambition fierce, but in a system where visibility is purchased rather than earned, talent without capital is invisible. The internet was supposed to open up the global marketplace to small producers. Instead, it built a new toll gate, and the toll is one most Vincentian businesses cannot pay. Now, these are very important thoughts that I am hoping that many of us would pay attention to. Because if we are not paying attention, then more than likely we would continue to be led by the nose to destinations that may not augment our lives, that may not put us in a good place, that may really help to waste our time. You know, you all might hear me say on this program that somebody comes on and say, look, you're wasting precious radio time. And part of saying that is that you may be wasting time as well by what you do, what you pay attention to, what you're dragged into. The moment you pick up your phone, the moment you open your laptop, the moment you start engaging with social media. So the question is for you to know what you are doing. You know, this is why I always argue for people to read books. To take up a book in your hand and read it, to feel the goodness of turning the page and learning something, rather than, passively sitting in front of your laptop or holding up your phone and doing some things that are rather idle. I want to go back again just one more time to where Dr. Robinson is going to advise us. He says, what you can do. I do not write this to counsel despair. The internet remains a powerful tool, but a tool you do not understand can be used against you. the next time you scroll, ask 3 questions. Who placed this in front of me? Is this voice authentic or performing authenticity for profit? Is this the best answer or merely the best funded? And to our policymakers here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and across the OECS, take digital governance seriously. Invest in digital literacy from primary school onward. Demand the transparency from the platforms that profit from our society. Support independent journalism that the algorithms are quietly starving, and find practical ways to help Vincentian entrepreneurs to compete in a digital marketplace that was never built with them in mind. The grandmother in Layou, the young man in Georgetown, the mother in Kingston, they deserve an internet that serves them, not one that merely sells them. Elites in every country benefit from the internet as it is. The rest of us must build the internet we need. It is time to emancipate ourselves from digital slavery. I tell you all, right, this brother is just absolutely brilliant. He writes simply, but his thoughts are mostly profound. And I want to encourage you. I remember some time ago, I posted one of Dr. Justin Robinson's columns, and I headlined it by saying, if you're not reading Dr. Robinson, you are not reading. And I know you may be reading a whole lot of things, but as Elma Francois, the outstanding Vincentian woman who is a national heroine in Trinidad says, you have to read, but you have to learn not to read stupidness. Remember when she had left St. Vincent, she was from Overland. She went to Trinidad. She started organizing with people like Uriah Buzz Butler, and then she was tried for sedition. She defended herself and won her case. And then when she got out of the court, I think it was someone from the Express newspaper asked her, well, how are you able to do all of this? And she says, look, you read, but you have to remember not to read stupidness. So that was just that piece that I thought that I should bring there. Shama is asking, what's the alternative? Get rid of the phone? Well, Shama, I can't tell you what to do. I, for example, have gotten rid of my television. I haven't looked at television in about 8 years. I go to a hotel, I don't turn it on. I don't turn on television in my house. I haven't turned it on for a long time. For example, on Facebook, I don't go to people's pages. There's so much, I try to, if anybody who follow my page would know that I try to put on something there that I think can raise people's consciousness, can raise people's understanding, can bring awareness about a whole host of issues, whether it's things here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the region, or the world. The phone is important. I can tell you, I don't know a lot about phones. I know I can send you a WhatsApp message, or if you send me one, I can read it and I can respond. I am sure that the vast majority of things that people do with phones, I don't know how to do it. And I remember some years ago, I had to share a document in court, and I told Justice Esco Henry that I did not know how to do it. And she laughed at me and said, come on, Council Thomas, you're a smart man, you know how to do it. You just have to spend the time. And she was right. There are just some things that I don't bother to try to do. I frequently say as a cop-out that the internet came a generation too late for me. But the young people do all kind of great things with telecommunications, and I encourage them to use it positively. But the key is for us to understand what we're getting into, because part of the solution to a lot of our problems is to understand what the problem is. If we have a proper understanding of the problem, then we can go on. But remember, as I said, this is I've been talking for all this program. I did say that this is an open forum. You all can feel free to raise issues that you may have. Kenny Boucher asked, Jomo, what are your thoughts on the new writers? And he gives an example of Marlon Butte. Well, I don't know if you saw it, Kenny. I did make a post. I placed pictures of Marlon Butte, Dr. Justin Robinson, Guevara Leacock, and I think there was somebody else. Oh, and Kenrick Washi. And I said that was the most beautiful development in a very, very long time. Young Vincentians, well, all of them younger than I am, some of them by decades, making contributions to the discourse that really, really helped to push the debate in ways in which I am so very happy. I don't know, some of our columnists are writing for 30 and 40 years. I have been doing Plain Talk, my Plain Talk column now for like, I think 22 years. I really don't intend to continue doing for all of these years. Like I see Dr. Fraser and Renwick Rose talked about writing for 50 years. I'm not so sure that I intend to do that. I would like to just walk away one of these years and just sit back and watch everyone else write, and to read them and probably critique them. But I would not want to be. So I think, yeah, Marlon Butte is Marlon writes well. I think all of them, Dr. Justin Robinson is brilliant. I like the way he writes simply, he writes forcefully. This is not to take away anything from Marlon writing as well. He's clear, he's forceful, he knows what he wants to say, and he says it well. Guevara Leacock is brilliant as well. Writing, the view from the outside, he took that up from what Brayton Horn, our Consul General, is he Consul General? I don't think that's what they call him in the UK, but he's our point man, diplomatic point man in the UK. He is. Guevara took up what he was doing after he became the top diplomat. Guevara, very perceptive, very thoughtful, very clear. I am impressed with what he's doing. I'm equally impressed with Kenrick Washi. Kenrick has been writing now for some time, and I really would like all of them. I know it's a difficult thing to come up every week with a piece, but I would really encourage, I know that Guevara is committed to writing a piece every week. Marlon is coming along and writing even more frequently. Kenrick, I have encouraged to try to write more frequently, but all of them are making outstanding contribution. I was particularly pleased last year in the run-up to the last election. It completely knocked the issue of citizenship by investment out of the water. You all may remember that question was being used politically by the now opposition Unity Labour Party. We had pieces by Luke Brown, which essentially supported the ULP's view. We had a piece by Guevara Leacock. We had a piece by Mikhail Charles, and we had a piece by someone else. We had a piece by someone else whose name eludes me now, but really, really, really good writers. And when they intervened on that that citizenship by investment program, it completely knocked that discussion out of the water. It put it in the realm of policy and took it out of Minasal passport, the vulgarity of that. So we have brilliant minds, and the encouragement is for more and more of them to write. I remember saying to somebody did raise that I would like to see more women start writing. I remember my good friend Holly Bino wrote some pieces that were quite perceptive on the environment and so on. The encouragement is for her to come and write even more frequently, and to have other young women or women not so young, but brilliant, who can write. We know that Anne-Marie Ballantyne and her husband Cheflon wrote a book on COVID, very good book that people are encouraged to read. So our intellectual class is growing and growing pleasingly. So I am impressed by that, and I would like to see more of that. So Shama, I didn't see the piece you wrote in Eyewitness, but if I would love to see it, I would love to get to read it. So if you can send it to me, or if you can, I would greatly love to read it. Here's a question from Chanel Brown. But I hope I'm not going to butcher this. I am going to pronounce it as Makichley. It says, how can the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines encourage more young people to pursue careers in social work, counseling, and other mental health professions? Well, that's an excellent question. And I have always said that the difficulty with countries like St. Vincent is that now that we have so many opportunities to send our people abroad, UWI, Cuba, Mexico, New Zealand, Australia, England, young people doing Monroe College, some of them Taiwan, and I'm sure I know a young man who studied in Romania. I know other people who studied in Austria. So we have had a chance to send our people far and wide to study. The big problem, though, is that we don't have a national plan. The political class may doubt that, but we don't have a national plan. It is for us to be able to say that, look, the most pressing need in St. Vincent is to have social workers, counselors, or the mental health professionals, and say, we are prepared to give scholarships, and we are prepared to give scholarships for persons to do social work, counseling, mental health, that you would come back and you would commit to work for at least 5 years. Right? I distinctly remember in the 1990s, or it might have been late 80s, the indefatigable Fidel Castro made a national address in which he said, by the turn of the century, Cuba will be a medical power. And at the turn of the century, Cuba became a medical power, sending thousands of doctors and other medical professionals across the world, whether it was to help treat Ebola patients in West Africa, COVID patients in Italy, or earthquake injured patients in Japan, or tsunami patients in Indonesia, or thousands of medical persons to Brazil or to Venezuela. many engineers and other doctors to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Wherever people wanted assistance, Cuba was able to send them. That is because you had a leadership that planned its future, that planned where it wanted to go, and implemented that plan to a T. Now, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have governments. I don't have a chance yet of really judging this one because it has only been for a short while. But we have a government that gives scholarships to anybody who wants to study anything. So somebody said, oh, I want to study sociology. And there's no clear explanation, no clear reason, no rhyme or reason why you want to study sociology. Particularly if you're thinking about studying sociology as a terminal degree. Because what are you going to do with a bachelor's in sociology? But people do it all the time. When people go off to study, they spend 3-4 years at a university and they come back with a sociology degree. Or people go off and study something and they're slotted in some ministry in St. Vincent and the Grenadines that has no relationship at all to what they studied. None. And that is why a lot of people, a lot of trained professionals get frustrated and they leave. Because that is a big part of the problem. Another part of the problem is that the salaries here are so small, and that because people are not trained politically and ideologically to make a contribution to this, to their society, and because the primary thing is to become rich, to get all of the nice things of life. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't want nice things, but there should also be a commitment to our countries, to help in its development, particularly for persons who got scholarships. But I mean, I give an example. We had a motorcade in solidarity with Cuba on Saturday. Those of us in the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Cuba Friendship Society, we organized the motorcade, and there were about 12 or 13 vehicles. There are scores of Vincentians, scores, who got a free education in Cuba. Free education. They came back, they graduated, they did not have a worry in the world. They did not have a loan to feed. And most of them didn't even think, well, boy, why don't I just put my car in a motorcade for? Because that motorcade was done in less than an hour. We went around Kingston twice. We started at Sign Hill, we went around Kingston. Went down Morris Road, went down this street, came up at North River Road Bridge, back street, came down through Heritage Square, back down the road, back up, went around Cane Garden, ended at Sign Hill. Less than an hour. And we couldn't get 25 persons to do that. In fact, we decided we're going to start at 10 o'clock. And at 3 minutes to 10, there were only 2 persons there. One other person and myself. So part of the problem that we have, that governments need to train their people to teach them not to harbor ingratitude and to be selfless, that it's not all about you. And this is why, like, sometimes when I go to listen to graduation or hear persons presenting, telling people, it's about you, follow your dream, follow your dream. Yeah, you can take your dream to absurd lengths, that your dream should be in sync with what your country is doing. Was it John F. Kennedy who said, ask not what your country can do for you, but instead ask what you can do for your country? I mean, that's a long-winded way of answering Michelle Brown McKeachney. I hope I did justice to. And there's another question from her. What policies could St. Vincent and the Grenadines implement to better integrate mental health services into the schools and primary? Well, I'm not a policymaker. I am only, I only talk. I talk for a living. I talk in the court and I talk I make a contribution on the radio or writing a column. I would say the government just have to make sure. Well, for one, I think we need to understand that St. Vincent has a serious mental health problem. You can just walk the street and see all the people who are having all kind of mental dislocations. So we have that serious mental health problem. We need to recognize that. I think that that mental health problem was grossly exaggerated with the draconian, evil vaccine mandate of Ralph Gonsalves regime, because it's so dislocated and destabilized so many people. People lost their jobs, they lost their livelihood, they lost their insurance, they lost their home, they lost their vehicles, they lost everything because of that evil. So there's that kind of mental health crisis. We see it in the prisons where many prisoners, I think the last time I checked, up to 40 persons who are charged with serious crimes could not be brought to the court because there was no one to evaluate whether this person was fit to plead. Fortunately, we saw early in this year, since this new administration came in, psychiatrist has been hired, so that may help. But I think the way in which we do that is to encourage people. You take somebody, for example, you say, look, we're going to give you a full scholarship. We want you to stay on after your medical degree to spend 2 years, 3 years specializing in psychiatry and come back. We want actuarial scientists. Somebody's brilliant in math. We want radiologists. Somebody's brilliant in biology and chemistry and physics and whatever that needs. We tell people this is what we want. We would give you a scholarship, but we want you to study so that you can come back and assist St. Vincent. Unless we are doing that, we ain't going any place fast, because the moment people come back, some of them don't even bother to come back. They get their education and then they go off to greener pastures, make a lot of money, and hopefully they send back a little remittance here and there. Yeah. So that's Kent is telling me that Kent Thomas I'm talking about, the perennial contrarian. He tells me, you are wrong here. The list of needs for the country was published in 2016. It was never implemented. The scholarships were going deeply to the politically connected. That's why many of their children never came home. We do not reassess the needs of the country, and we tend to have base level requirements. Like right now, we have a scholarship and it says math, data science. All these I currently use at a level most Vincentians don't what? Want something in my PhD research. I don't know. Okay, somebody's asking, what is the case against Dr. Friday and Mr. Bramble about? Bernadette Ryan Phillips. Well, essentially that case says that both men, elected parliamentarians, they are being challenged on the ground that they are not eligible to participate in our elections by virtue of the fact that they have sworn allegiance to a foreign power. Both Mr. Bramble, Foreign Minister Bramble, and Prime Minister Friday says, yes, we hold Canadian citizenship. Yes, we swore allegiance to Canada, but our constitution is peculiar in that it allows persons who are Commonwealth citizens to contest. In fact, the Constitution does not put up as a criterion for contesting or holding high office. It does not put up as a criterion Vincentian's citizenship. It says that anyone who is a Commonwealth citizen can. If you live here for 1 year, you have residency, you can contest. And if you contest and you're the leader of the party, of a party, you could be from Nigeria, you can be a Pakistani Taliban, for all we know. You can emerge as the leader of the country and lead. So that's their argument, Mr. Luke Brown, Mr. Carlos Williamson. No, that's not true. You swore an allegiance to another country, and you can't have split allegiance. So if you're swearing allegiance to another country, we are saying that you should not be sitting in our parliament. They are also saying that if, and that's incidentally, Ms. Bernadette Ryan Phillips, that trial begins tomorrow here in the High Court. The arguments will be made before experienced Justice Gordon Tom. Those of you who do not know, I can tell you that Justice Tom has close to 30 years in judicial experience. She was here as a High Court judge. She left St. Vincent and went to the Court of Appeal and spent about 10 or 11 years on the Court of Appeal. And now she's back in St. Vincent on a 3-year contract. So she's a highly experienced judge, has seen a lot, has done a lot of very important cases. And I think that she is a very good person to hear this matter. Speaking for myself, my position on this issue has evolved. There was a time when I thought it was an open and shut case, that if a challenge was brought, that Dr. Friday and Fitzbramble would maybe ask to give up their seats. I have read much more since then, a lot of cases from around the world. I have read different articles done by so many other persons. And I don't think it's a open and shut case. I did say that these men have a case to answer. I am glad that the case is being answered beginning tomorrow. But based on my readings now, I think they have a fighting chance and should survive the challenge. So, but however it goes, this matter before the court would clarify for Vincentians who can legally run. One thing of importance is that we may recall that about 2 or 3 months ago, the government brought a proposed amendment to the parliament in which they claim that they are clarifying what the law means. They want to clarify to say that the swearing allegiance to a foreign power does not include a Commonwealth country. I thought then, I continue to think that that was ill-advised. I think that it is not a good look when you have a constitutional challenge and then the court and then the governing party attempts to use its parliamentary majority to change the law midstream, although it is highly improbable that even if the laws were changed before this matter is decided, that change in the law would have any kind of impact on the case before the court. So that's where we stand on that, Ms. Ryan Phillips. I hope that helps you. What I would like to see is for the government, and this is a low-hanging fruit, to change the law to deal with who are eligible to contest. Is easy. We don't have to do a referendum. We don't have to have 2/3 majority. The clause that we have to change is what in legal jargon says that it is not an entrenched clause. So we don't have to referendum and so on. My preference, rather than to have this narrow thing that the government was trying to do, is to do something more all-embracing and sweeping that says any natural-born Vincentian who lives any part of the world for any period at all can, if he or she so chooses, come back to St. Vincent and offer up themselves for some of the highest offices in the land. That's what I think the law should say. That's not what the proposed change is doing. I thought that's very opportunistic and self-serving, because it's only intended to protect the two persons who are there now and who are being challenged. Yeah. So let's see what else we have. We're coming to the end. And Ken Thomas says many people come back, they get bad treatment, low pay. So why stay? Well, I mean, you're not going to come back to St. Vincent expecting high pay. I mean, the salary scale in St. Vincent is very low. I was rather surprised the other day. I was doing a matter for a lady who works in the civil service, and she has been working in civil service in a fairly good position for the last more than 10 years, and I was shocked that she was making less than $4,000 a month. I really did not realize the salaries were that low. But then again, I don't think the Prime Minister of St. Vincent makes $15,000 a month. And I have always been of the view that politicians should make at least $20,000 a month, only because they have so many responsibilities. So if you want to give them a salary of about $20,000 a month, then you strengthen the anti-corruption laws that they know if they don't, if they break those laws and engage in misbehavior in public office, they can be tried, and if they're found guilty, they can be jailed. But I don't think that you can you can't expect high salaries in St. Vincent. St. Vincent has some of the lowest salaries in the region. When I decided to return to St. Vincent in 2004, I knew that I was going to have a serious cut in pay to come back, because St. Vincent would never pay me the kind of money that I would have made in New York as a lawyer. I am sure that if dollars was my prime motivation, I would have been much better off today if I had stayed and continued to practice law in New York. So it can be just low pay. But yeah, some people come back and they're not treated well. That is correct. Well, Francis Byron said, what case do they have to answer? Personally, I think it's an open and closed case. Well, remember, you know, my friend Francis, legal cases are not decided on personally what we think. It is what the law says. And I think that in a real sense, because of the peculiar nature of our Constitution, these men are in a much better position than I think that they are in, that I thought they were in when I first came to the issue, because I was looking at it at the most basic level. But as I said, whereas in Antigua and St. Kitts and Dominica, the constitutions say you must be a Vincentian citizen in order to contest. I'm sorry. Where in Antigua and St. Kitts and Dominica, it says you must be a citizen of each of those islands in order to contest. In St. Vincent, our law is different. Our law says you have to be, once you are a Commonwealth citizen, you can contest. So that I think makes the difference. And that is why I believe that the challenge is being answered tomorrow and they will overcome the challenge. So let's see. It's 3 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of beginning tomorrow. That matter would be before the court. Justice Gertel Thomas presiding. And like I said, she is a very experienced lawyer and jurist, a lady I have tremendous respect for. So we shall see what happens soon. Both sides are represented by a lot of lawyers. I think they're Mr. Bramble has his lawyer, PM Dr. Friday has his lawyer, then there are the presiding officers who are state officials in East Kingstown and in Northern Grenadines who have their own lawyers. So we are going to have probably more than 100 years of experience tomorrow lined up. Probably more than 200 years of legal experience lined up tomorrow on that bench, on the bar, when the matter begins. So if you can, I don't know if it's being aired live, I doubt. But if you can find the time to go on listening, it may be useful for you to go on and help yourself to a better understanding of what the law says of this thing. But as I said, once and for all, however the case comes out, it will help us to know who can and who cannot run. The other thing that we need to know is that whichever side loses, if Justice Tom goes, renders a decision, whichever side loses, that side is going to appeal. But we also have to remember that the appeal is terminal, so you only can appeal to the Court of Appeal. You cannot appeal to the Privy Council. So election petitions matters, they end at the Court of Appeal. Kenrick Butler is asking if Friday and Bramble lose their seat, will there be a by-election? And if so, can they renounce their Canadian citizenship and run in the by-election? My read of the Constitution is that there will be a by-election. People like Luke Brown and Ralph Gonzalez and the others think that this is going to be like a throwaway vote and that the persons who came in next, Luke lost by 1,000 votes. Mr. Williams lost by close to 2,000. There's this notion that they're going to pick up a seat. I don't think that is the case because our Constitution says wherever there's a vacancy in the Parliament, that will be filled by a by-election called by the Governor General after 90 days. If they were to lose, for example, suppose they go in and Justice Tom rule against Friday and Bramble. That matter is going to be appealed, as I said. If they renounce their citizenship, these are two leading officials, so I think that such a renunciation may come rather swiftly. If they renounce their citizenship, assuming that the matter goes to the Court of Appeal and they lose, again, which means that they have to give up their position. They will give up their position, and once they give up that position, they no longer swear allegiance to a foreign power. Then they should be able to contest. Nothing should stop them from contest. Who's fitting the bill with the opposition? I don't know. There's a real chance that based on constitutional matters, when it's a very important constitutional matter, and I think this one is, the court tend not to order costs against the losing party. If the governing side lose, the court tend to order costs. But in constitutional matters, there's not very often, unless you can prove that the case was a frivolous case, that the opposition will need to pay. Well, Kenny is asking why is an important case not carried live? Well, there are many jurisdictions around the world where matters are not carried live. The U.S. Supreme Court don't carry matters live. It's only recently the UK Supreme Court started carrying matters live. I'm not so sure how many judiciary across the region carry their High Court or Court of Appeal matters live. But I'm sure there's going to be commentary in it. People would talk about it. Some of us would follow it and would certainly bring issues to the fore. Because in the first place, much of it is going to be legal jargon. I don't know if you ever had a chance, Kenny, to go into a court. But even me, sometimes, if I go into a court, depending on where the matter is, I walk right back out because it's rather mundane issues. It's not something that you can easily follow. And you may just step away and just say, okay, I'll read what happened. And plus, these are very technical matters. One of the things I can say is that it is said, and I've seen it in some of the decisions, that procedure is substance in election petition matters. So look, for example, that the attorneys for Mr. Bramble and Dr. Friday making technical points to try and see if they can get this matter knocked out. Because, as I said, in election petition matters, procedure, in other words, following what you're supposed to do by the letter, is substance. So you can look for that and see how that happens. So those are the issues that I'm glad you all came on and helped me. Well, Michael Roach, I'm not sure why you believe they wouldn't appeal. I'm pretty confident they will appeal. It's almost inevitable that either side would appeal, because nobody is going to want to let the decision of a first instance judge decide a matter that is so important and controversial. It's like the vaccine mandate case. It was inevitable that whichever side won that case would have appealed. It just tactically didn't make sense for the governing side to appeal, because I am convinced that that appeal and the continued punishment of workers is what played a big role in the ULP losing so massively on November 27th last year. So it's 10 o'clock. I don't want to go on illegally. I want to thank those persons who come on to the live and ask questions, made comments. I want to thank gentlemen for calling in and bringing something to the fore. I want to thank all of you who didn't comment. You sat there, you listened for the entire 2 hours. You helped to make this program what it is through all of these years. It's a program that has been running now since 2005. Thank you so much. Remember to read, pay close attention, because what you don't know can kill you. Until next week, this is Jomo Thomas saying good night from Voices.
BFM 99.9 presents Voices, a talk show that's not just new, it's